Skill. What is it? How much of Team Fortress 2 is actually skill, and how much is random crits? Well, let's just start listing off just a few skills that TF2 has. Well, we have aiming, which encompasses flicking, and then we have tracking, soldier, projectile jump, then we have bonk jump, movement, air blasting, dodging, and we also have Yeah. Am I gonna finish this video in time?
Nope.
Well, let's get into what skill actually is. According to The Art of Game Design by Jesse Schell, skill in video games can be summed up into three main categories: physical skills, mental skills, and social skills. Physical skills are what usually come to mind when you may think of skills. They encompass things like controls, aiming, and movement. Mental skills are things like decision making, memory, and puzzle solving. Social skills would be things like reading your opponent, fooling your opponent, and communicating with your teammates. So how does this play into Team Fortress 2? Well, we have quite a few physical skills that play into TF2, the first of which is aim, which has three components with it. The first is flicking aim, which means the mouse moves from one position to another quickly in order to hit their shots. This is especially present in classes with hit scan weapons that deal high damage with a single shot, like Sniper. The second type of aim is tracking aim, which is used in almost every class. This means that instead of quickly flicking to your targets, you would instead be trying to keep your crosshair on the target as much as possible. This aiming style is most often found in classes with high fire rate and low damage weapons, like the Heavy. However, many people find tracking aim to be more consistent and accurate than constantly flicking. The last component of aim is projectile prediction. This can be found in all the projectile classes such as Soldier, Demoman, and Pyro with their flare gun, and sometimes Medic with the Crusader's crossbow. This component of aim has to do with predicting where the enemy will be and adjusting the aim accordingly due to the time it will take for the projectile to actually reach the enemy. Also, for classes like Demoman, there is an arc of the projectile that adds into the equation. This has been found to be the hardest part of all the aiming components to master, due to how much calculation goes into each individual shot. The next physical skill that comes into play is movement, which Team Fortress 2 simply has an abundance of. Basic movement is made of these three actions: moving back and forward, then sideways, crouching, and jumping. Normally you cannot change your trajectory while midair. Classes like Scout get a few more movement options, for instance being able to double jump. First of all, the most basic of movement skills, crouch jumping and air strafing. Crouch jumping is the act of crouching while jumping. This raises to the bottom of your colliding hitbox, allowing you to reach higher places that you would not have been able to reach with a normal jump. Air strafing comes from exploiting the source engine, or if you hold down a strafe movement while turning the camera in the same direction, it would move you midair, curving you around. This would allow you to do things like jumping around corners. Next comes movement mechanics that get complex fast. The first, the most iconic movement from Team Fortress 2, rocket jumping. Rocket jumping is something that is unique to Soldier, and sometimes Pyro, where the knockback comes from a rocket that can be used to propel yourself great distances at great speeds at the cost of your own health. This skill has so many layers that can be added on top of it. For instance, crouch jumping will lower your hitbox, which means that rockets will explode closer to you, allowing you to rocket jump even further. Air strafing allows you to adjust your trajectory midair. For more information about rocket jumping, I suggest this video, as rocket launching could be a whole hour-long video just on its own. Now the Demoman has two main weapons, a grenade launcher and a sticky bomb launcher. The grenade launcher shoots projectiles in an arc, and the projectiles either detonate on a direct hit or after a short delay, making hitting the enemy a trial of skill in and of itself. The sticky bomb launcher works the same way, except the detonation is done by the player by right-clicking. Now Demoman's movement works very similar to rocket jumping from the Soldier, but instead of rockets, Demoman uses sticky grenades and sometimes just his pills. This allows the Demoman to get around the map very quickly. For more information about sticky jumping, I suggest looking at these videos here. The next movement skill that Demoman has is called trimping, where an exploit in the source engine is used where the character is considered flying if moving on a steep enough ramp at a high enough speed. The act of sliding on a ramp like this is called surfing. With a shield, the Demoman can charge at a high speed, which is enough to make use of this exploit. This allows him to move around the map like so. Now there are more intricacies about Demoman's movement, but I will not be going over this in the video for the sake of time. Now for both the Soldier and Demoman, there exists something called rollouts, a way to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible while losing as little health as possible. These rollouts use parts of the map as places for rocket jumping, sticky jumping, surfing, and even trimping. Some examples of rollouts are like this. Now for physical skills that don't involve movement, the Sniper is a great example. Most of his weapons are hit scan based around getting precise headshots. The character needs both precise flicking and tracking aim to do so, having to hit both stationary and moving targets. Now the targets of the Sniper's attacks depend on both social and mental skills, but the act of hitting itself is a physical skill that can be mastered. Now for some mental skills. These are mainly number-based skills, such as remembering how much ammo is in a weapon, knowing how much damage your gun does over what range, if it has damage drop-off, etc. Mental skills also involve things like managing ammo and meter, knowing how long until you need to reload, how long until the enemy needs to reload, and meters such as Scout's Bonk, Soldier's Buff Banner, Medic's Ubercharge, Spy's Cloak, and so on. These all come into play for the player to keep track of, both their own and the enemy's. First, we'll go over the class's social skills and get into what the video game community calls game sense. The soldier doesn't seem to have any social-based skills at first, but reading the enemy's movements plays an incredibly big role in how it's played. Because the class's main damage output is done through projectiles, the soldier depends on being able to read where the opponent's going to be, and if they travel in midair. This prediction is called air shots, a mix of physical, mental, and social skills. The pyro has a job in social skills to reveal spies that tend to disguise and mimic their team's behavior. This is very easy for pyro as their attacks will light enemies on fire, making the spies clearly stand out. Demoman is a class that depends very heavily on social skills, almost being the class that depends the most on it, although he's not. Regardless, Demoman is a class that thrives on prediction. This is due to the fact that both of his weapons are projectile based, and his melee weapon is usually a last resort, unless it's a demo knight. His grenade launcher requires the player to calculate mentally where the projectile will drop, and travel time to where the enemy is going to be. He has to know exactly how the enemy will move in order to hit them, which is all social skills, reading the movements of the enemy. But there is something else that requires even more reading of the opponent. Sticky traps. This requires the Demoman to track the enemy's movements even long after they've left his sightline. A professional Demoman will always seem to be one step ahead of you, knowing exactly where you will go before you even decide to go there. Spy, Gabe Newell's favorite class. The class that requires you to almost psychoanalyze every enemy player just to get a few kills. Before we get into the active killing, first we have to get into the fundamental part of Spy's kit, his disguise and invisibility. Starting with his disguise kit, it allows him to take the appearance of anyone on the enemy team. This alone, however, is not enough to fool the enemy team into thinking you're on their side. Most people will realize your trick and start attacking you. You have to act the part as well, chasing people with a medigun when pretending to be a medic, running to a vantage point as a sniper, or even pretending to be an enemy spy in your own back lines. It does not stop there, however. The spy also has invisibility, allowing him to trick the enemy into thinking he went one way while going the complete opposite direction. Now, the part that everyone who's played the game knows, the trick stabs. To play a good spy, the player needs to know exactly how the enemy will move, what direction they'll look, and how aggressively they'll try to kill him. Utilizing this information allows the spy to pull off some insane stabs like matador stabs, overhead stabs, stair stabs, and more. Game sense represents the mental side of the game, combining both mental and social skills. It encompasses things like knowing what the enemy team's objective is, map awareness, where the health and ammo pickups are on the map, the flanking routes, and lastly it involves positioning. Knowing where the best vantage points are to shoot someone else without getting shot yourself, or you can get a height advantage where sentry turrets can be placed to get the most usage, etc. The last skill to have is having good callouts. This allows your teammates to know things like what threats are coming, what class there are, what's dangerous about the enemy's health, if the enemies are flanking and running away, or if you need health. Now, back to the original question. Yes, Team Fortress 2 is made up of a bunch of different skills, not just random crits. The game has an extremely high skill ceiling, but also has a pretty low skill floor, allowing for new players to pick up the game and have fun without needing to try their hardest to keep up with other players. While it may seem unfair at first, new players will always have easy options to play that allow them to have just as much as fun, even facing some of the strongest players, also known as pub stompers. Many players simply play the game a lot to get better. However, there are some things that you can do to improve your skill at a faster rate or more specific scenarios. For instance, MGE, or My Gaming Edge, allows players to 1v1 each other at fast paces to improve their skills very quickly. For things like movement, there are maps that allow you to practice this, like TR Medic. For more advanced movement skills like rocket jumping, there are an insane number of maps that allow you to practice those as well. And for the physical skill of aiming, there are maps like TR Walkway RC2 that allow you to practice shooting bots, and some people even go outside the game, using external aim trainers like Kovacs and AimLab. Now I know some of you might be confused about the sudden upload, especially since I haven't uploaded in 3 years in general, and the fact that this video is not about Unturned, but the thing is, school got ahead of me. I greatly underestimated just how much it would take up my time. And frankly, I didn't have the motivation to make more videos along the same vein I had been, as I haven't played Unturned for at least a year now. Now, I tried games like Valorant, but it didn't really work out, and PUBG died a long time ago. I hope this style of video was enjoyable for you all. Sadly, I can't guarantee any more videos along the same vein, as this post was for a class, but I decided to share it with you all as it was information that you guys might find interesting. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.